As students in the pandemic, this past year we've been on our computers more than ever. We've all become familiar with Zoom and Canvas. But have you ever stopped and wondered what goes on behind the scenes when you run these applications? Well, these applications are a product of programming languages. According to the article, Why Teach Programming Languages? By Olin Shivers, professor of computer science at Northeastern University, published on November 1st, 2008, Shivers states, "It is important for students to understand something about computation, as this also illuminates the world in which they live. A world whose connective tissue is increasingly composed of pervasive computational systems. The mechanisms of programming languages, in turn, inform a student's understanding of computation itself, its powers, and its limitations. As a computer science major, I'd like to illuminate your world today by informing you about programming languages. A method of communication used to give instructions to a machine or computer. Programming languages undergo 3 different steps before they can be put to use, and they come in 3 different types. Today I'll be discussing with you how a programming language works. Next I'll be discussing the 3 types of programming languages, and finally I'll be discussing the 3 most loved languages of today. So how does a programming language work? Well, the first step that a programming language must go through is it must be written in a special application called an integrated development environment, also known as an IDE. IDEs include Microsoft Visual Studio, Eclipse, and Xcode, just to name a few. Now, once you open up an IDE, you have to create a new project. This is as easy as creating a new document on any other application that you've used, such as Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or Google Docs. Now, once you finally create that project, only then can you finally begin writing your program in what's called source code. Now, once you write source code, the next step is for your source code to be compiled and interpreted. Now, refer to these images by medium.com and guru99.com. When your program is compiled, it takes the source code and converts it to a machine code file, which is a file of 1s and 0s. Now, if you happen to get an error on this, you'll get a compiler error, which shows you a list of the errors, and your program won't even get a chance to run. Now, on the other hand, an interpreter takes your source code and converts it line by line. So if you get errors, you only get 1 error at a time, starting with the first error that's encountered. Now, only when your program is free of errors can you move on to step 3. Now, once you get successful output of your program, this is where step 3 comes in. Your program is displayed on the console, and users can enter data or information. In this particular program that I wrote, the users had to quit the program by entering the number 4. So now that you know how programming language works, let me talk to you now about the 3 types of programming languages. Now, there's 2 levels of abstraction in programming languages. There's low level and then there's high level. But low level consists of 2 languages that are known as machine language and assembly language. Now, machine language looks like a bunch of 1s and 0s, which is hard to read. Refer to this image by icracker.com. Machine languages, according to the article Abstraction Level Taxonomy of Programming Language Frameworks, published in October 2013, in the International Journal of Programming Languages and Applications by Dr. Bajender Kahalwal, machine language is the lowest and most basic form of programming languages that there is. It was also the first type of programming languages to be developed. So this is what they had to code in back in the day, a bunch of 1s and 0s. Now, the next programming language, assembly language, is still kind of tedious to read because it's made up of mnemonics. Hien Yu, in his article, The Forgotten Assembly Language, published on March 9, 2016, in the Journal of Scientific and Engineering Research, he describes assembly language as a series of symbolic representation of machine language operation codes that are also known as mnemonic codes. So You can see why there's a need for something easier to read and something better to develop. This is where the final type of programming language comes in, which is the high-level programming language. High-level languages use English words and mathematical symbols, which is far easier to read and comprehend than ones and zeros or mnemonic codes. So now that you know the three types of programming languages, I'll be discussing with you now the three most loved languages of today. According to the 2020 Developer Survey, which was released by Stack Overflow, a renowned community of programmers who comes together to ask questions and receive answers, they listed the three most loved languages as Rust, TypeScript, and Python. The first programming language on the list, Rust, was introduced in 2010. And the article, Safe Systems Programming in Rust, by Ralph Jung et al., published in April 2021, states that Rust has been rising in popularity so much that it has been used now in Facebook, Cloudflare, Dropbox, and Amazon. The next programming language on the list is TypeScript. Now, this language was introduced in 2010. According to the official website, TypeScriptLang.org, in 2021, they say that TypeScript is an open source language that is a superset of JavaScript. Now, JavaScript, which was introduced in 1995, is described by developer Mozilla.org in 2021 as a scripting or programming language that's used to implement complex features on web pages. So you can see in this Venn diagram by O'Reilly.com, TypeScript supports JavaScript and vice versa. Now, as a matter of fact, you all use JavaScript this week when you log on to Canvas. JavaScript is what lets you implement features such as the start assignment button, submit assignment button, the modules, and even the timer when you're taking a quiz or a test. That's all JavaScript complex features. The final programming language on the list, which is Python, was introduced in 1991. According to pythoninstitute.org in 2021, they say that Python is used in complex internet services such as search engines, social media, and cloud storage. Now, according to the article, 10 world-class companies using Python, published on June 8, 2020, by Claire Costa, she says that the top 10 companies who use Python as a programming language are Google, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Quora, Netflix, Dropbox, Reddit, Amazon, and Uber. So if you all used Google this week or the previous week to research your speech, you all used Python. Now that you know the three most loved languages of today, let me recap what you now know in general. You now know how a programming language works. You know the three types of programming languages there are, and you know the three most loved languages of today. Understanding programming languages illuminates the technological world we live in today. I hope I was able to illuminate your world by informing you about programming languages. Thank you.